What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video. Today I'm starting a new series on the move, and we're starting with the 2021 free agency / trade options at the QB position. My idea with this series is it's kind of fun to ponder where players might end up going. A lot of these players probably end up staying where they already are. Like, I'll mention a few of them as we go along, like Dak Prescott. I think he stays in Dallas, but like I said, it's more fun to theorize where they might be a good fit, what would be fun to see, and things along those lines. If you like this type of video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new for more football-based content, sports content really in general, and comment down below what you think of my picks or what player you'd like to see on a certain team. It's always fun to just kind of imagine, and that's kind of the point of this series. I don't think I'm going to go like 100%. I am starting off 1 for 1, and that's where we'll begin here shortly. But just have fun. Give me a weird, wacky prediction or something you think would be cool to see fit-wise, or just a player in a random spot that you've never thought about before. So I hope you guys end up enjoying this series. I'm excited to make it, but without further ado, we'll jump into it. As mentioned, I am starting 1 for 1. I made this list yesterday, being Wednesday, the 17th of February. You're seeing this or watching this on Friday, so it's been a couple days to plan, shoot, and then release. But I made this list on Wednesday, the day before Carson Wentz got traded to the Colts, which is who I predicted. And it's not one that is shocking. It's something that a lot of people have predicted. Field Yates put out a prediction for all 32 NFL QBs next year. He had Wentz to the Colts. Many other people did. That's all I'm trying to say. The fit obviously makes sense with Frank Reich, the head coach of Indianapolis. He was the OC in Philly during Carson Wentz's near MVP season. And honestly, if Reich can get Wentz to a spot where he doesn't hold on to the football unnecessarily long and can cut down on just the unnecessary, silly plays that lead to turnovers, and he was one of the top QBs in interceptable passes, which doesn't mean they become interceptions, but passes that probably should have been. If Reich can, which are two things to overcome, two tough things to overcome, I should say, but if Reich can get him to get rid of the football when it's necessary and not make dumb reads. You know, we're talking about somebody who has played once at an MVP level, which is a level higher than most players ever reach. And he's been there. I don't know if he'll ever get back, but he has at least been there, and that's more than you can say about a lot of QBs. And for Wentz, you know, it's a fresh start. Philadelphia was not working out. He wanted out. You know, Jalen Hurts looks like he's going to be the starter next year, and I'm going to make a video about winners and losers of the trade, just like I did for the Stafford and Goff trade, and in my eyes, Hurts is one of the winners. He came out on top, and he's going to be the projected starter for next year. And if you're Philadelphia, I mean, it sucks to take a number 2 overall pick and only get a third this year and a second that might turn into a first if Wentz plays 75% of snaps next year. Like, it sucks to see the value degrade that much, but at least you got something for him. And I mean, 2 mid-round picks if it stays a second, or a third and then a future first. This team has so many holes, plenty of areas to address. You'll take whatever draft capital you can get, but I did make that prediction, so I am starting off 1 for 1. So this first little crop are actually going to be QBs that I think will get traded or end up being moved. Some of these might not be via a trade, and then one of them is Kirk Cousins. I don't necessarily think he's on the move, but it's kind of fun to theorize based off of what I've done with another player. But we'll start things off with Deshaun Watson. Look, it makes too much sense for it not to be the Dolphins. I get that the Broncos reportedly said they're going to be really aggressive going after him, and I think they should. They're a QB away. Same could be said for San Francisco. If Watson ends up in San Fran, that might be the best team in the NFL. But you also have the team like the Jets, who Watson apparently isn't as interested in, but they need a QB and they have draft capital. But when you talk about the Dolphins, not only do they have the draft assets, but they can give Houston Tua Tagovailoa, and they can give him a star defensive player, which reportedly the Texans want 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 1 or 2 starter to star level defensive players. When I heard that, I was like, Washington should jump all over this 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and Montez Sweat and make it happen. But Miami can give them, let's say, Tua 1, maybe even 2 firsts, a second rounder this year, and someone like Christian Wilkins, who was a first rounder just a couple of years ago, or maybe even Noah Igbenogany, who was their third of 3 first-round picks last year. The Dolphins just have so much to be able to pull the trigger. And that's not to mention Watson wanted Houston to go after a minority for their head coaching and GM opening, which is a valiant cause, and I'm glad that he's doing that. And you look at Miami, they already have an African-American head coach and GM. I mean, like, in so many different ways, it makes perfect sense for him to end up in Miami. So because of that, too much coincidence can't be coincidence. I'm going to predict that Watson, if he is on the move, he's on his way to Miami. And because of the trade, you could also say Tua is on the move back to Houston. So the next name on the list is Sam Darnold. And this might be wishful thinking, and it probably is, but I'd love to see him in Pittsburgh. I'm a Steelers fan, if you didn't know. I think the Jets do take a quarterback at 2, so they'll take any value they can get for a once top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And I think Darnold has the potential to still be a starting QB. I don't know if he has the superstar potential that I once saw in him. I still think he can be a good starting QB in the NFL. And since he's in the last year of his deal, whoever buys on him, hopefully it's Pittsburgh, has a year to see him develop and get better before they have to pay him. But I think in this case, if you're Pittsburgh and you give up, let's say, a 3rd round pick to get him, you're putting him in the room to learn behind Big Ben for a year and then take over that starting position. I also think Ben has one more year in him. I don't think his arm is as washed as people have made it out to be. I think it was the play calling and Randy Fichtner that led to really bad offensive games for Pittsburgh. So Matt Canada, a new OC, really innovative mind, wants to put people in motion, which I love. I think Big Ben is going to have a solid year. I don't know about great, but he'll be good, I think. And then it makes sense to go ahead and give up a mid-round pick. You get Darnold. I would sign him sooner rather than later while his value is low, mirroring what the Saints did with Jameis Winston. I've heard rumors and theories that the reason that the Saints turned it over to Taysom Hill instead of Winston was to keep his value low. It's maybe that, but it's probably more so he wasn't quite adequated with, their offense as much as Taysom Hill was at least. But if that's the case, that's still an interesting thought. They wanted to keep his value low so they could bring him back next offseason, and maybe the Steelers could do that with Darnold or just sign him quickly and hope that he's the guy moving forward. So it's probably wishful thinking, but I have Darnold going to the Steelers, and you'll see I have the cap room on all these teams and the QBs that I think that they'll end up playing with the next year. And the Steelers and Omar Khan in specific have a lot of work to do when it comes to getting that number back into positive territory. Would be a good place to start. They'll restructure Ben's deal if he comes back. He will not make $41 million this year, and that'll be a good start. So our 3rd quarterback on the list, Jimmy Garoppolo, and I had to pick this picture over a 49ers one just because this feels too right. I don't know if it's via trade or if it's cut. Right now, there's no dead cap if the 49ers cut Jimmy G, so I could totally see that if they find another option at quarterback, which is where we'll get next. And if Jimmy G is cut, the most likely team to sign him is the Patriots. Bill Belichick is clearly a believer in him. He almost, or actually, I think he, in his eyes, wanted Jimmy G to be the successor to Tom Brady, but Robert Kraft wanted to stick with Tom Brady for a few more years, and the rest is history. But makes a lot of sense. He's familiar with the team, the organization, the system, everything alike. And also, it would just be such a fun storyline to play out and see if Belichick got his way and Jimmy G was the successor, what would have happened. We've seen Brady can win on his own. He didn't need Belichick. And in my eyes, that cemented him as like the greatest and most accomplished player in football history, proving that he didn't need Bill Belichick, New England, a bad division, etc., etc. He went out and did it on his own. This is a chance for Belichick to kind of do the same thing. So our next QB, the only reason the 49ers would move on from Jimmy G is if they got another one. And what if they pulled off this trade for Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins makes a ton of money, and it's not illogical for Minnesota to want to move on. Granted, they have a system in place. He fits with it. He put up great numbers last year. Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson. There's a lot to like about that offense. Dalvin Cook, of course, is a stud as well. They had Gary Kubiak retire. It looks like his son is going to be the next OC, so you can expect similar play calling and offensive scheme design. But I mean, you go from Mike Shanahan to Kyle Shanahan, and they're both, zone run based archetypes, but Kyle Shanahan has proven to be a very good pass play engineer, if you will. And who knows, maybe the same thing with the younger Kubiak. But I think in this spot, Cousins' familiarity with Shanahan is the reason this move would be made. And ultimately, Kirk Cousins has bet on himself time and time again in his career, and he's won a lot of those bets. He's pretty good at that. And this might be an upgrade. I think they're about the same. I think Jimmy G's just a little younger. Kirk also struggles in big games, like his record on Monday Night Football. He's like 1 win, like 1-9 or something like that. Not that that's the end-all be-all, but, I see this more as a side grade, and ultimately the winner would then be Minnesota. Even if they didn't get Jimmy G in the trade and kept like adequate QB play, they'd get value, draft capital, and they'd get Kirk Cousins off the books, and that's a win in itself. But it's fun to theorize about the idea of Kirk Cousins reuniting with Kyle Shanahan, and does Cousins make the 49ers better? Does it get them over the hump? Does it make them a true Super Bowl contender or maybe even a front runner? I don't know, but it's fun to think about. Okay, and for the final QB to talk about when it comes to trade, Marcus Mariota. I have him going to Chicago. Look, the Bears lost out on Carson Wentz, at least in this little pocket realm on the move universe. And now in real life, we know Carson Wentz is not going to Chicago, and it felt like the Bears were the most desperate team to overspend to get him, but they still didn't do it. So Marcus Mariota feels like a good fit. He can give you everything you had with Mitch Trubisky in regards to his legs and his mobility, but Mariota might just be better across the board. Is that crazy to say now? Has Mitch Trubisky fallen that far? Couple that with Mariota balled out that one Thursday night game against the Chargers. Like, I was watching that, and in my mind, I was like, Derek Carr's been good, but Mariota is making a case for himself to maybe be the starter beyond when Carr comes back. Carr was great this year, and that, Mariota didn't end up starting, and it makes sense. But he showed out in his one primetime opportunity, and he's got an opportunity to sit, learn, be a bench player, and maybe grow as a player overall. He's 27 years old. He was once the number 2 overall pick. It's an opportunity for Chicago. Move on from Trubisky. You get Mariota. His cap hit's less than $11 million. So despite Chicago being in negative cap room territory, $11 million is very inexpensive for a QB. And maybe this is a move that makes sense for both sides, right? Chicago gets a QB that is better than Trubisky, and they go from the last team to make it into the playoffs because they have a very good running back and a very solid defense, into a legit can win a playoff game, maybe 2, if things get crazy, make a serious run. And for Marcus Mariota, you go from the guy who was a semi-bust in Tennessee, became a backup behind Ryan Tannehill, go to Oakland. You have a spark game, capture the eyes of those around the league, and then you turn your career around and you become, probably nothing more than like a league plus starter. But, considering you were a bust, to turn it around into a starter, that's pretty good. I like the idea of this fit between the two, and I'd love to see it in real life. All right, so our next quarterback is Dak Prescott, and as I mentioned in the open, I think he stays in Dallas, probably gets franchise tagged again. It's another chance for Dak to bet on himself, prove himself to be a very good QB again. But in this world of theorizing, players on the move, Dak Prescott just recently followed the Washington football team on like Twitter or Instagram, one of the two, it doesn't really matter. But, and that kind of sparked some theories. And Washington went hard after Amari Cooper, and Cooper actually turned down their deal, took less money to stay in Dallas to compete. Now, what if Washington comes out on top this time, steals a division, not only player, but franchise QB? And then you look at Washington. You could have gone after Deshaun Watson, like I mentioned earlier, but now you keep Montez Sweat, you have all your draft capital, and you still have a very good QB. Dak is nowhere near as good as Deshaun Watson, no doubt about that, but Dak is still really good, top 10 QB in the NFL when he can win you a lot of games. And when you look at the division, Dak would then go from the Cowboys into Washington, and he's the best QB in that division. And that sways a ton of weight as an entry into the postseason. Whoever wins that division, guaranteed a playoff spot. We saw that last year. Obviously, Washington losing record, but won the division, get into the playoffs. And with Dak Prescott being the best QB in the division, and it's right now not even close, that is a huge sway. And I just love to see Washington get their QB, have it be somebody from the Dallas Cowboys organization. There's just a ton of storylines that would make for such good television. Next up is Mitch Trubisky. So obviously he's leaving Chicago in this little pocket world. And you know what? This makes sense. A couple years in a row now, the Saints have taken on a project, this is going to sound harsh, but a charity quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater a couple years ago, and look, he played, pretty okay in Carolina. He was fine. And then you look at Jameis Winston. It looks like he's going to come back, and actually Winston's one of the next 2 QBs we'll talk about here. But again, a project, a fix-em-up, buy a cheap used car, get it working like it's brand new. That seems like what New Orleans has been kind of working towards the past couple of years. And dude, if they could do it with Mitch Trubisky, then at that point I would believe in Sean Payton being the greatest QB resurrectionist of all time. So hey, I mean, I don't think it'll actually happen. This is probably like the least likely of any of this. Maybe that and the Dak going to Washington. But man, if Sean Payton could just turn Mitch Trubisky around, that would be the most jaw-dropping, for lack of a better word, turnaround in football history in my book. Now we'll transition to Cam Newton, and I am signing with the Dallas Cowboys, so obviously Dak is gone in this little rundown on the move universe, and Cowboys need a QB. And I mean, if this was 5 years ago, Cam Newton on the verge or right after his MVP season signing with America's team, it'd be like the biggest piece of like news for the entire offseason. It would dominate headlines for months. Now it's not as special. It's definitely a downgrade if this were to happen for the Cowboys. And Cam Newton is coming off of a disappointing year. But I think he has a little bit of time left in him. He was working in New England with not the best weapons. I don't want to say bad. Jacoby Myers had, solid games. Damian Harris looked like he could be a, every down or a workhorse back, I should say. But ultimately the results were not great for Cam. But I think he still has the talent. I think he can turn his career around and get at least back to a Pro Bowl level one more time. I think he can get to the Pro Bowl one more time. And you do it in Dallas, that would be another great storyline of all the ones that we've already talked about. And this is just one where it's just like America's team. This has been like the most talked about QB over the last what feels like decade. So it feels like stars aligning in a lot of ways. So if Dallas lost Dak, Cam Newton feels like an interesting fit at least. Okay, only 4 quarterbacks left. Now we're going to talk Jameis Winston. So the Saints go and get Mitch Trubisky. And I think Winston stays. He's another one of those players. I think he doesn't leave. But how about this? Minnesota now needing a QB, getting rid of Kirk Cousins. They don't get Jimmy G in that deal. Jameis Winston. I don't know. There's not a whole lot to this other than I think it'd look cool. It'd be fun. He's got a big arm. Chuck it deep. Justin Jefferson's already one of the best deep play wide receivers in the NFL. Adam Thielen can do a lot of different things. Winston, Dalvin, Cook. I don't know. This honestly might be the best supporting cast that Winston would have. He had a lot of talent in Tampa, don't get me wrong, with Chris Godwin, but Godwin's better now than he was with Jameis there. And then obviously Mike Evans is a stud, but this Minnesota offensive line is as good, maybe even a little better, which is, again, a little crazy to say than Jameis's early years when he was in Tampa and that O-line was not very good. And I mean, Dalvin Cook's bar none the best running back he's played with. And that offensive scheme, it'd be based around getting Dalvin fed, play action off of that. I don't know. I don't know if he'd be better than Kirk Cousins if all this played out, but at least be fun to watch. And I mean, that's part of why I'm doing this. So Winston's probably a bit of a reach going to Minnesota, but here's one I actually think might happen. I wouldn't put money on it or anything like that, but Ryan Fitzpatrick heading to the New York Football Giants. And I think this is interesting because we've seen Fitzpatrick play pretty well the last few opportunities he's gotten to be a starting QB, including last year. And Brian Flores pulling Tua to put in Fitzpatrick in big moments. And there's been reports and rumors, so take it with a grain of salt, that Dave Gettleman still wants Daniel Jones to be his QB of the future, but Joe Judge isn't sold. And I feel like this could be the opportunity. Joe Judge signs Ryan Fitzpatrick, and in games where Jones underperforms, or even if Jones battles injuries, you bring Fitzpatrick in, and if Fitzpatrick plays anywhere near as good, or if he just plays as good or better than, God forbid, if he plays better than Daniel Jones, Joe Judge just won an argument. It's a case of pulling a player into a situation to prove a point. And I think if Joe Judge were to get Fitzpatrick and he gets on the field and he outplays Daniel Jones or even just plays as good, it begins to open Dave Gettleman's eyes potentially that, Daniel Jones isn't better than Ryan Fitzpatrick at that point in his career. We got to find a different QB. That cannot be our long-term answer. And if Fitzpatrick plays better, then it's like a no-brainer. You got to move on from Daniel Jones. So I could see the Giants bringing in Ryan Fitzpatrick and trying to manipulate a situation, and maybe he makes Daniel Jones better. Maybe it's like a Jordan Love to Aaron Rodgers situation where Jones feels the pressure behind him and elevates his game. Maybe. Or he plays bad, Fitzpatrick is, solid, maybe even better, and the Giants have all the proof that they need to move on from Daniel Jones. And on a very similar note, Andy Dalton going to Denver. If Denver doesn't get Deshaun Watson, I could definitely see them bringing in a veteran QB. Andy Dalton was not great, but he was not bad last year. And he put up some big games with some pretty crazy numbers. And ultimately, maybe Dalton pushes Drew Lock forward and gets him to the level that he was at the very end of his rookie year, which even then it's too small of a sample size to tell. But maybe Dalton, that competition, pushes Drew Lock forward, or, same thing I said about Daniel Jones, it's an opportunity for Denver to see, yeah, Drew Lock is not the answer moving forward. Andy Dalton's as good, or maybe even better, and he's an aging veteran, and at this point, a backup level QB, maybe a low-level starter for most NFL teams. So it's another opportunity, bring in a veteran, see if it pushes your young guy forward, or opening the organization's eyes to the fact that that young QB they just took a couple of years ago isn't their guy long-term. He can't be the franchise QB. Last player we'll talk about, Tariq Taylor. I could have stopped at 12, but Tariq Taylor is just like, I feel so bad for the guy. Like, he has done nothing wrong. And actually, if anything, he's been a very positive player in his NFL career, both what he does on the field and what he does off of it as a leader, a member of a community. He's just a nice guy. And I always feel like he catches the worst breaks. He struggled a little bit in Cleveland, and the Browns quickly make the change. Baker Mayfield puts together a great rookie year. Okay, I get that. But then this year, he's supposed to be the starter, and then gets a punctured lung from a team doctor. Something that should never happen. And he loses his starting job because Herbert looked good, and Herbert's the guy of the future. Like, he only got one game. Like, that's so sad. He didn't look good in that game, but here in this spot, signing with the Philadelphia Eagles, they move on from Carson Wentz. I think Taylor is the backup. Don't get me wrong. I don't foresee him going to Philly and taking the job from Jalen Hurts. But the reason I did that is because Hurts does so much with his legs. Injuries are always something that could come up. And I think Tariq Taylor has a similar enough play style to where if Hurts got hurt, no pun intended, Taylor could then come in and give you close to the same level of offensive play for Coach Nick Sirianni. And also a guy who's just been around the league and he has coached up. I mean, look, he had a hand in Baker Mayfield having a good rookie year, and I'm sure he had a hand in Justin Herbert having a great offensive rookie of the year caliber season. How big of a role? I don't know. Probably not that big, but hey, if he comes on and he can help move Jalen Hurts along, help him mature, help him grow out of a raw stage that he was when he was drafted, that's a win for Philly. And there's just no sense in not bring him on at that point. So I like Taylor as a backup option there in Philly behind Jalen Hurts. But that's going to do it for the video. I hope you all enjoyed this new series, episode 1 of On the Move. I'm going to be doing another one of these, but for the running back position, and that'll probably be just free agents. If you were wondering, I'm using Mike Clay's unrestricted free agent list that he put out on Twitter. So if you want to see who else is a free agent, go to his Twitter. Go ahead and check it out. He's obviously a good follow, but hope you all enjoy. Hit the like button if you did. If you're new, please hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a ton, and you get more football content like this. Comment down below your favorite picks of mine, and also what player, what QB on what team you would like to see. That's all. Until next time, my name's Tej, and I'm signing off.
I'm part of the last generation that remembers time of God.